We live in a world that screams control everything, control your time, control your money, control your future. They tell you that if you're not in control, you're weak. But here's the truth. Real strength is knowing what to control and what to leave in God's hands. You hustle, you grind, you sacrifice sleep, time, comfort. You fight battles most people can't even imagine, and yet some things still slip through your fingers. Why? Because not everything is meant to be in your control. Some things are meant to be surrendered. When you trust in God, you're not becoming passive. You're becoming powerful. You stop fighting battles that aren't yours. You stop chasing things that were never meant for you. You stop stressing over outcomes that were already written in the stars. We are not God. We are soldiers, and a soldier follows orders. A soldier moves with faith. A soldier doesn't question the entire war just because one battle was lost. When life hits you hard, when the business fails, the relationship ends, the betrayal cuts deep, leave it in God's hands. Let Him sort out what you can't. In life, we are constantly told to take charge, to be responsible, to be the master of our fate. That mindset is powerful, necessary even, but there comes a point where the obsession with control becomes toxic. You can't control everything, and when you try to, you burn yourself out, chasing things that are never meant to be in your grip. There is power in letting go, not in weakness, but in wisdom. The key to real dominance in life isn't grabbing everything, it's knowing what to grab and what to release. Every day, you're hit with problems, bills, relationships, betrayal, failures, noise from the world, opinions from people who don't matter. You feel this pressure to fix it all, but here's a harsh truth. Most of it isn't yours to fix. You can control your discipline, your focus, your actions, your response. That's it, the weather out of your hands, other people's opinions out of your hands, the past, dead, the future, not promised. Your power is in the present moment and in how you show up. People destroy their mental health trying to manipulate every outcome. They obsess over how someone else feels, or if something's going to fail, or if they'll be judged. That's wasted energy. You're giving your power away to forces you were never built to handle. Why do you think anxiety is so high today? Because people are constantly living in their head, trying to control outcomes they can't see. That's not strength, that's self-sabotage. Now flip the script. Imagine waking up and saying, "What's mine to control today?" Maybe it's your diet, your business, the way you treat people, the way you manage your time. You handle that with laser, sharp focus. You master what's in front of you, the rest, let it go. Let God deal with what's outside your reach. That's not being passive, that's being strategic. Think of a boxer in the ring. Does he try to control the referee, the crowd, the judges? No. He controls his stance, his timing, his punch. He stays in his zone. That's how champions think. They don't waste time on variables outside their control. They train for the war, and when the chaos hits, they trust the preparation. That's how you have to live. You dominate what's yours, and you give the rest to a power bigger than you. People say they believe in God, but then live like everything depends on them. That's not faith. That's ego. That's fear dressed up as control. Faith is understanding that once you've done your best, the outcome is none of your business. It's already written. You can either exhaust yourself swimming against a current you'll never beat, or you can use that current to carry you to something greater than you imagined. When you stop trying to play God, you create space for peace, for clarity, for strength. You're no longer trying to micromanage every inch of your destiny. You're moving with trust. You're not reactive. You're intentional, and that right there is when you start winning from a place of power. In a world obsessed with control, logic, and results, faith is often seen as a crutch. People hear the word faith and immediately think of blind submission, of sitting back and waiting for miracles to fall from the sky. They mistake faith for weakness, for passivity, for inaction, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Faith is not for the weak, faith is for warriors. It takes more strength to believe in something greater than yourself, especially when everything around you is falling apart, than it does to rely only on what you can see. Faith isn't about avoiding the fire. It's about walking through it knowing you won't be consumed. That kind of confidence doesn't come from books or strategies. It comes from a deep-rooted understanding that you're not alone, that your pain has a purpose, that your struggle has structure. You keep moving forward not because everything is perfect, but because you know the storm is part of the plan. That's faith, and that mindset builds unshakable people. Look at the ones who truly rise above. Athletes, entrepreneurs, fighters, survivors. The ones who bend reality, who break cycles, who overcome insane odds. You think they did it by sheer logic alone. No. Somewhere deep inside they had faith, faith that their effort meant something, faith that even the losses were not the end. They didn't need guarantees. They moved anyway. That's power. That's control at the highest level, not over the world, but over your inner world. The weak fold when results don't show up immediately. The weak panic when they don't understand the path. The weak need to see the finish line before they even take a step. But the strong step forward even in the dark. Because faith gives you vision when your eyes can't. It gives you fuel when your body is tired. It gives you peace when the world is chaos. And in that peace, you find clarity, strength, and precision. People who live without faith are controlled by fear. They can't take risks. They can't endure setbacks. Every failure becomes a full stop. But faith-filled people, they fall, but they don't stay down. They don't see delays as denial. They don't crumble under pressure. They trust the process even when it's painful, because faith doesn't eliminate the fight. It empowers you to win it. You can train your body. You can sharpen your mind, but if your soul is empty, if you have no faith, when life punches you in the face, you'll break. But when you operate with faith, there's a fire inside that can't be extinguished by circumstance. You know that even when the plan makes no sense, there's purpose behind it. That's a level of strength most people never tap into. Faith isn't soft, it's not fragile, it's not naive. It's the anchor that holds steady when everything else shakes. It's the reason you keep showing up when others quit. It's the force that lets you walk with confidence in a world full of uncertainty. It's not weakness, it's the ultimate weapon. The ego is a liar. It tells you that you're in control of everything, that you don't need help, that you can handle life on your own terms. It convinces you that surrender is failure, that asking for guidance is weakness, and that admitting you're not in full control is somehow an insult to your strength. But that mindset is exactly what destroys people. The ego isn't your ally, it's your enemy in disguise. If you want to win in life, you have to kill the ego and submit to something bigger than yourself. The ego thrives on validation, on being right, on being admired. It wants applause more than truth. It would rather crash and burn with pride than rise through humility. That's why so many people stay stuck, because their ego won't let them admit that their way isn't working. They keep forcing, pushing, manipulating, trying to bend life to their will. But life doesn't bend to ego. It bends to surrender, not surrender to failure, but surrender to purpose, surrender to divine timing, surrender to the reality that you're not God and you never were. When you surrender the ego, you don't become weak. You become free, free from the constant need to prove something, free from the fear of being wrong, free from the pressure to always have it figured out. That freedom creates clarity, and in clarity you become dangerous. In the best way, you stop wasting energy on appearances and start focusing on actual growth. You don't chase likes or praise, you chase purpose. There's a difference between confidence and ego. Confidence is built on truth. Ego is built on illusion. Confidence says, I know my value and I don't need to show off. Ego says, I need everyone to see how valuable I am or I'll crumble. When you operate from ego, your emotions control you. You get defensive, reactive, insecure. You fight battles that don't matter. But when you surrender the ego, you move in silence. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need validation from people who don't matter. You stay locked in on your mission and let God handle the rest. Ego is afraid of surrender because surrender requires trust. It means handing over the steering wheel and saying, I don't know what's next, but I believe I'm being guided. The ego hates that. It wants to be the god of its own little universe. But when you let go, you make space for real power to enter. You make space for alignment, for wisdom, for divine protection. You stop relying on your limited perspective and start walking with a higher vision. People don't lose because they're weak. They lose because their ego won't let them change. It won't let them grow. It won't let them admit they need help. That's why so many repeat the same cycles. Different people, different jobs, same result. Until you destroy the ego, you'll keep sabotaging yourself. Because the ego doesn't care about truth. It only cares about being in control, even if it means your life stays small, bitter, and broken. Pain is part of the process. Most people run from it. They complain, they curse their luck, they act like the world owes them a smooth ride. But the truth is, without adversity, there is no transformation. Pressure creates diamonds, fire forges steel, and God doesn't build warriors in comfort. He builds them in chaos. Every setback, every heartbreak, every betrayal you've experienced wasn't a punishment. It was a blueprint, a custom, designed path to develop the version of you that can't be broken. You see, comfort breeds softness. Ease makes people weak. The reason you've been hit with storms is because you were never meant to live soft. You were built for something higher, and that higher calling requires discipline, mental toughness, and spiritual endurance. Those things don't come from winning all the time. They come from getting knocked down, standing back up, and still believing that your life has purpose. They come from being in the pit and trusting that the pit has a door. God doesn't waste pain. Every adversity is engineered. Every struggle has strategy. You're not going through random chaos. You're going through divine construction. The pain you feel now is shaping the strength you'll need later. The losses, the delays, the closed doors, they're building something in you that comfort never could. You're being trained for battles you can't even see yet. And the deeper the pain, the greater the calling. Most people break under pressure because they don't understand this. They think adversity means something's wrong. They take it personal, but warriors don't think like that. Warriors see adversity as a message. You're being prepared. When you operate with that mindset, everything shifts. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, what's this building in me? That perspective is dangerous because it takes away fear. When you understand that adversity is divine training, you don't flinch anymore. You adapt, you grow, you dominate, and here's where it gets deeper. God already saw the fight before it showed up. He already mapped the path before you knew you were on it. That means the tools you need are already inside you. You just haven't been pushed hard enough to find them yet. That pain you're in right now, it's unlocking something heavy, something unshakable. It's not just about surviving. It's about becoming someone who can't be moved no matter what life throws at you. Adversity reveals who you really are when everything is stripped away, money, comfort, attention, what's left? That's where you meet the raw, unfiltered version of yourself. That's where God does his real work. He strips the ego, exposes the fear, forces you to confront yourself, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you correctly. Stronger, sharper, cleaner, Without the distractions, without the lies, without the dead weight, you don't become a warrior by reading motivational quotes. You become a warrior by bleeding in battle, trusting the process, and knowing deep down that every scar is part of the design. There's nothing wrong with the grind. In fact, the hustle is necessary. Waking up early, pushing limits, staying focused while the rest of the world is asleep. That's what separates the average from the exceptional. But the grind alone isn't enough. If your hustle has no direction, it becomes chaos disguised as ambition. You can be running full speed and still be lost. That's why hustle without divine alignment burns people out. It takes more than hard work, it takes purpose. And purpose isn't something you create out of thin air. Purpose is revealed when you surrender your path to God. You weren't built just to chase checks, followers, or applause. You were built for impact, but impact doesn't come from hustling aimlessly. It comes from allowing your grind to be guided. That's where power multiplies. When you give your ambition to God, you're not becoming soft. You're becoming dangerous, because now you're no longer hustling for ego. You're building with divine instruction. You're not just moving. You're moving in the right direction, at the right time, with the right fire. There's a trap that a lot of people fall into. They worship the hustle. They think as long as they're working hard, they're doing the right thing, but hustle isn't holy unless it's guided. You can grind 24/7 and still miss your calling. You can chase success so hard that you end up successful in the wrong assignment. That's not winning. That's wasted potential. Real winners know when to hit the gas and when to pause and ask, God, is this even where you want me? That moment of surrender doesn't slow you down. It sharpens your edge. It strips away distractions and elevates your moves. You stop building out of fear. You stop chasing validation. You start creating from clarity. That's a whole different level of momentum. Because now you're not building your own little empire. You're part of a kingdom mission. And when your hustle is aligned with heaven, there's no force on earth that can stop it. When you let God direct your hustle, He'll take you places hustle alone could never reach. He'll open doors you didn't even knock on. He'll position you in rooms your resume doesn't qualify you for, not because you played every angle perfectly, but because you trusted Him with the blueprint. You still show up early, you still put in the reps, you still push like a machine, but your steps are ordered now. You move with vision, you move with grace, you move with a fire that doesn't burn out. The world glorifies grinding until you collapse, but God calls you to build with wisdom, to work, yes, but to also listen, to hustle, but to stay obedient, because sometimes the most powerful move isn't to push harder. Sometimes the real flex is to pause, pray, and let Him reroute you. That's not weakness. That's elite-level discipline. It takes strength to hustle, but it takes real power to hand over control and trust that your effort is part of something bigger than just success for success's sake. Your work matters, your grind matters, but it becomes unstoppable when you let God set the direction. The world is loud, louder than it's ever been. Every second, someone's talking. Social media feeds you opinions, fear, ego, lies, and distractions. Notifications, headlines, messages, debates. It never stops. And in the middle of all that noise, you start to lose something critical, your connection to God, not because He isn't speaking, but because you're not quiet enough to hear Him. You can't hear wisdom when your mind is cluttered. You can't feel peace when you're constantly plugged into chaos. If you want divine clarity, you've got to learn to mute the world and tune into something higher. Most people are addicted to noise. They can't go 5 minutes without checking their phone. They sleep with the TV on. They fill every empty moment with sound because silence forces them to confront what's really going on inside. That's the trap. The noise keeps you distracted, entertained, and numb. It makes you forget what really matters. It replaces conviction with comfort. But silence is where truth shows up. Silence is where God speaks. God doesn't compete for your attention. He's not going to scream over the world to get through to you. He waits, and when you're ready to listen, when you finally shut down the noise, he speaks in a way that cuts deeper than any motivational quote or viral video ever could. His voice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a nudge, a whisper, a deep knowing in your gut that guides you towards something greater. But to feel it, you've got to be still long enough to recognize it. The problem is, people want clarity without silence. They want direction without stillness. They want answers but won't sit in solitude long enough to hear them. You can't receive instruction if you're constantly distracted. You can't ask for a breakthrough and then ignore the silence where the breakthrough begins. The stillness isn't empty, it's strategic. It's where God recalibrates your vision, resets your spirit, and reveals things that can't be seen in the noise. Every warrior needs a moment of stillness, not because they're weak, but because they're smart enough to know that battle requires strategy, not just force. You can swing wildly in life and waste energy, or you can slow down, get quiet, and let God hand you the blueprint. That's not inactivity, that's precision. It's knowing that silence isn't a pause, it's a weapon. And in that silence, your next move is revealed. When you shut out the world's volume, you also silence the lies it's been feeding you, that you're not enough, that you're too late, that you're alone, that you have to figure it all out by yourself. But the moment you silence that external chaos, God reminds you of who you are. He brings back the clarity, the purpose, the peace, not through noise but through stillness. The same stillness that the world has taught you to fear is where your answers are waiting. The peace you've been chasing doesn't come from more information. It comes from divine revelation, and that only happens when you create space for it. You weren't designed to live constantly overstimulated, overwhelmed, and overconnected to everything except your Creator.